The night before my daughter's wedding, she looked me in the eye and said the best gift I could give her was disappearing after the ceremony. So I did. I remember the way her voice didn't crack. Lila always cracked when she was nervous. When she was 8 and lost her favorite ribbon. When she was 16 and failed her driving test. When she was 19 and confessed she had fallen in love for the first time. But tonight, her voice was flat. Practiced. Like someone had rehearsed the words with her. "Mom, I just need space after the wedding." She said, "Real space. Ethan and I agreed it's best if you step back for a while." "Step back?" I asked. My hands were steady only because I willed them to be. Her eyes darted briefly toward the living room, where Ethan stood pretending not to listen. His expression was polite, but too still. I could feel him watching, measuring, waiting for my reaction. "It is not personal," Lila added. "Ethan says a clean slate is important for a strong marriage." She swallowed. "We even told our friends we would move into the river cottage next month. They are all excited for us." My breath hitched. "You told people that Lila—" I know. She cut in quickly. "But they think it is ours already. It makes things simpler to just go with it." There it was. Not just distance. Ownership. Assumptions. A future built on something I had never promised to give. Ethan stepped forward then, just enough to make his presence felt. "It will be good for her. Coraline. Less pressure. Less interference." The word interference lodged in my chest. I looked at my daughter, the girl I raised alone after her father died. The girl who once came to me for everything and saw someone I barely recognized. Someone who believed a man she had known for barely 2 years more than the mother who had nursed her through fevers and heartbreaks. "Is this what you really want?" I asked. Lila hesitated. Just a flicker. Then she nodded. I did not argue. I did not cry. I simply said goodnight, walked to my car, and let the cool Savannah air clear the sting from my eyes. If she wanted me gone, then I would give her exactly what she asked for, and everything that came with it. And by morning, their river cottage would no longer be waiting for them at all. The morning after Lila asked me to disappear, I spread the deed to the river cottage across my kitchen table. My name only. My name was written in the same ink I signed with nearly 15 years ago. I traced the letters with my finger, remembering the nights I worked double shifts at the diner, the weekends I cleaned houses, the way I saved every stray dollar after Robert died, so Lila would never feel the weight I carried. The cottage had been the first dream I ever bought for myself, and now my daughter was promising it to people I had never met. I folded the deed and slipped it back into its envelope just as I heard a knock at the door. It was Lila, no makeup. Hair hurried into a knot, but her expression guarded. "Mom, I just came to drop off the rehearsal schedule," she said, placing the paper on the counter like she did not want our hands to touch. "Ethan says it will help keep everything smooth." "Of course," I replied. "Are you all right?" She blinked. "I am fine. I just want things to go well tomorrow." I nodded, though her voice trembled in the space between her words. There was something she wanted to say, something she could not, before I could press gently. Another voice drifted through the open doorway. "Lila, you ready?" Ethan's tone was light, almost cheerful. She stepped aside to let him in. He gave me a smile that never reached his eyes. "Coraline, big day coming. Busy for all of us. I imagine so." I answered. He leaned closer to Lila. "Texted the guys about the cottage. They are thrilled for us. Told them we finally got our hands on that property." My throat tightened. "You what?" He did not even flinch. "They all knew it was coming eventually. You said it yourself. Lila, your mom wants you to have a stable start." Lila went pale. "Ethan, that is not what I—" He cut her off with a soft laugh, slipping an arm around her waist. "It is fine, sweetheart. Your mother knows we appreciate her generosity. Generosity. As if I had already given it away, I watched them walk down the steps together, their silhouettes tightening into one shape, and in the quiet that followed, I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not grief, but a clear and deliberate understanding of what I had to do next. I started small, not with accusations, not with confrontation, just with the kind of quiet checking any mother would do when something in her daughter's life felt off balance. The first clue came when I stopped by Lila's apartment that afternoon. She was rushing out the door, purse half-zipped, her phone wedged between her shoulder and ear. "No, I already paid the electric bill," she was saying. "Yes, both months. I told you Ethan is handling his end next week." When she noticed me, she forced a bright smile and ended the call. "Mom, I did not hear you knock. You sounded stressed." I said, "Just bills," she replied quickly. Nothing serious, but her hands were shaking. Later that evening, a letter arrived in my mailbox by mistake, addressed to Ethan, but delivered to me because our last names both began with V. I set it aside, but the envelope was thin and harshly stamped with the words, "Final notice." I did not open it. I did not need to. I had seen versions of those letters before, back when Robert and I had lived paycheck to paycheck. The next piece arrived without me searching for it. I bumped into Lila's friend Rowan outside the bakery. She hesitated before speaking. "Is Lila okay?" she asked. "I hope so." Why Rowan bit her lip? She mentioned covering another one of Ethan's tuition loan payments last month. She said it is temporary. But that is not what he told his co-workers. What did he tell them, I asked? That he is debt-free, that he is building a new life in Savannah without any baggage. I thanked her and walked away with a pressure growing behind my ribs. The final slip in Ethan's mask came when I called a small tech company listed on one of his online profiles. A man answered with a tired voice. "Ethan Mitchell." Sure, I remember him. He said, "Smart guy, but never stayed long. Left after some financial issues. He reinvents himself every time money gets tight." I sat very still with the phone pressed to my ear. One clue could be a misunderstanding. Two could be coincidence. But I now held more than enough pieces to see the shape forming beneath his practiced smile, and none of it pointed toward the future he promised my daughter. I spent the evening at my dining table with a stack of papers that did not belong to me, but had found their way into my hands all the same. Unpaid loan notices, bank overdraft warnings, letters from a collection agency demanding repayment. None of them addressed to Lila, all of them addressed to Ethan. I did not need a detective. I only needed a pair of eyes willing to see what was right in front of me. At 8 o'clock, I called the reception coordinator, a calm woman named Denise who had handled weddings in Savannah for more than 20 years. She answered on the second ring. "Denise, I need to add something to the seating arrangements." I said, "Of course. Ms. Mercer, what kind of addition?" "Small white envelopes. One on every seat. They should look like thank you notes." She hesitated. "That is a lot of envelopes. Should I tell the couple no?" I said quietly, "This is from me." Her voice softened. "Understood. Bring them in the morning and I will place them myself." When I hung up, the silence in the room grew heavier. I gathered the documents into neat piles, one for each envelope. Nothing dramatic, no accusations, just the truth printed, undeniable, and ready to speak for itself. As I slid the first sheet into an envelope, the door behind me creaked. Lila stood there, still in her rehearsal dress, fingers twisting in the fabric. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked. I set the envelope down. "Of course, I feel like you are angry with me," she whispered. "I do not want tomorrow to feel strained." It was the closest she had come to reaching for me since Ethan entered our lives. "I am not angry," I said, "but I am trying to make sure tomorrow is honest." Her brow furrowed, honest how I opened my mouth, then closed it. She was not ready. Not yet. "Just trust me for now," I said. She nodded slowly, though confusion flickered in her eyes. When she left, I waited until I heard the front door click shut before pulling out one last envelope, plain, unmarked, and heavier than the others. This one was for her. Inside, I placed the canceled listing paperwork for the River Cottage and a handwritten letter I had rewritten 3 times. Not angry, not pleading, just honest. 60 envelopes for the guests, and one for the daughter who no longer knew what stood behind the love she was pushing away. Lila barely slept. That much was clear. When I arrived at the bridal suite that morning, she was already in the makeup chair, staring straight ahead as the stylist pinned her hair. Her reflection flickered when she saw me. "Mom." "Hi." Her voice was thin, careful. I smiled gently. "Morning, sweetheart." The stylist stepped aside, sensing something tense between us. Lila gestured for me to come closer. "Ethan said you might be too busy today," she murmured. "Busy or not, I am here," I replied. She let out a shaky breath, like she had been holding it all night. "I do not want things to feel strange." "They do not have to," I said. "Let me help you." For the first time in days, she let me touch her without flinching. I fastened her veil, smoothing it over her shoulders the way I did when she was little and scared before school performances. "You look beautiful," I whispered. She nodded, but her eyes drifted toward the door as if expecting Ethan to appear and approve her expression. When the ceremony began, I took her arm. She hesitated just for a heartbeat, but then she let her weight settle beside me. The music started. Guests rose. Lila inhaled sharply. "Mom," she whispered. "Am I doing the right thing?" I squeezed her hand. "That is something only you can decide." Ethan waited at the altar with a smile so polished it almost reflected the lights. As we approached, he extended his hand toward Lila, but shot me a quick, silent warning with his eyes, a demand to stay in line. I placed Lila's hand in his, though my stomach tightened. The officiant began the vows. Lila's voice trembled on her first line. Ethan leaned in, smiling to the crowd, but his fingers curled around her wrist, not softly, not lovingly, firm, controlling. Lila winced. The slightest flinch. My breath stalled. Ethan whispered something through his teeth, never breaking that perfect smile. Lila's shoulders stiffened like she had been reminded of a rule she dared not break. I kept my eyes on her, not on him, as she forced herself to continue the vows she suddenly looked too small to carry. I loved her enough to let the truth arrive on its own timing. And by the end of the night, it would. The reception buzzed with the kind of laughter people force after too much champagne and too little honesty. Savannah's historic hall echoed with chatter, clinking glasses, the scrape of chairs against polished floors. I sat quietly at my table, hands folded in my lap, watching Lila lean into Ethan's side as if she needed him to stay upright. A microphone cracked. The master of ceremonies smiled brightly. "Ladies and gentlemen, before dinner, the mother of the bride has prepared a small gift for everyone. You will find a white envelope at your seat." Coraline. What a thoughtful gesture. Lila turned to me, startled. "You made something for everyone I did," I said softly. Ethan's jaw clenched. Around the room, paper tore, a rustle, then a pause, then a sound I will never forget, a single sharp gasp, followed by another and another, until the entire room fell into a horrified hush. "What is this?" a man near the front demanded, waving a page. "You owe me $10,000, Ethan." You told me the investment fell through. Ethan shot to his feet. Sit down! Mark! This is ridiculous! Another voice rose from the opposite side. You took my retirement money. $20,000? You said you would pay it back before the wedding. Lila's breath hitched. Ethan, what are they talking about? He grabbed her hand. Do not listen to them. This is Coraline. She is trying to destroy us. A woman stood abruptly, her face flushed. You told me you had no debts. So why does this letter say otherwise? She held up a bank notice with his name stamped across the top. Forgery. Ethan spat. All of it. She did this. I stayed seated. Everything in those envelopes came from your mail or your messages. Nothing was created. Nothing was altered. Lies, he snarled. Then explain this. A man in a gray suit said, holding up a signed loan agreement. I know your handwriting, Ethan. I watched you sign this. Ethan's face drained. His mouth opened. But nothing came. Lila stared at the papers in her trembling hands, messages he had hidden. Screenshots he thought she would never see. A restraining order from a past engagement he claimed had ended peacefully. Her voice cracked. Ethan, what did you do? The room did not breathe, and for the first time all day, Ethan stopped smiling. Lila stumbled backward as if someone had struck her. The papers shook in her hands. Ethan, this cannot be real. Tell me it is not real. Ethan grabbed her elbow hard enough that several guests flinched. Lila, listen to me. Your mother planted this. She has been against us from the beginning. That is not true. I said quietly. He ignored me. You know how she is. Controlling, always meddling. She wants to ruin our future. Lila's breath came shallow. But the signatures, the dates, the messages. He slammed his palm against the table. Enough! I said it is fake! His voice cracked like a whip across the room. The charm he wore all year peeled away in one violent snap. Lila recoiled. Do not talk to me like that. Oh, please, he snapped. You would still be living in that cramped apartment if it were not for me. I gave you direction, discipline, something your mother never could. My chest tightened. Lila looked between us, tears streaking her cheeks. I thought you loved me, she whispered. I do, he said, but the word was empty. But you have been a child about all of this. You told everyone that cottage was ours. And then your mother, Lila, interrupted, voice breaking. I never told people it was mine. I only said. She stopped, as if the realization hit mid-sentence. Ethan stepped toward her again. You embarrassed me tonight. Do you understand that? She backed away so fast her heel caught the edge of the tablecloth. I moved forward, steadying her. Her fingers clutched my arm. She leaned close, voice barely a breath. He made me say that to you. The night before the wedding, he said if I did not, you would interfere with our life. I did not know how to undo it. Ethan heard the whisper, his face twisted. Unbelievable. Now you are taking her side. Lila stood straighter, still trembling, but no longer retreating. I am taking the side that tells the truth. The first call to the police came from the man in the gray suit. The second came from the woman with the retirement papers shaking in her hand. By the time the third guest reached for their phone, Ethan realized the room was no longer under his control. He bolted toward the doors. Ethan Lila shouted, her voice breaking. Do not run from this. He shoved through two guests and nearly knocked over a chair. I am not staying here to be humiliated. You people have no idea what you are talking about. I stepped in front of him before he could make it to the hallway. You need to stop. He glared at me with a hatred I had never seen. Move. Coraline. Before he could push past, two officers entered, guided by several guests pointing directly at him. Ethan Mitchell, the first officer, asked. Ethan straightened, as if he could pull the truth back into his body by sheer posture. This is insane. My wedding is happening right now. These people are spreading lies. The officer's expression didn't change. We received multiple reports regarding unpaid debts, fraudulent loan agreements, and financial misconduct. We need to speak with you. You cannot arrest someone on their wedding night for gossip. We are not acting on gossip, the second officer replied calmly. We are acting on a warrant out of Camden County. Lila's face drained. A warrant. Ethan staggered. That was supposed to be sealed. It was not, the officer said. Charges include financial coercion and misuse of funds. We will sort the rest at the station. Ethan looked at Lila then, desperation finally cracking through his arrogance. Lila, tell them you believe me. Tell them your mother set this up. She shook her head slowly. I believed you for 2 years. I will not believe you now. The officers cuffed him as he continued to insist he was the victim, his voice echoing through the hall. But no one followed him. No one defended him. The truth had finally named its price, and he had run out of ways to pay it. Lila came home with me that night without a word. She moved like someone walking through water, slow and shaken, in my small Ardsley Park townhouse. She stood in the middle of the living room, still wearing her wedding dress, hands limp at her sides. Mom, she whispered, I am so sorry. She broke before I could answer. Her knees buckled, and I caught her, holding her as she sobbed against my shoulder. I let him twist everything. She choked out. He said you were holding me back, that you wanted to control me, that you would never let me live my own life, but I believed him. I do not know why I believed him. You wanted to love him, I said softly. That was not a crime. She shook her head hard. But I hurt you. I said things I did not mean. I told you to disappear. You were scared, I said. He made fear sound like logic. Lila sank onto the couch, exhausted. I walked to my room and returned with the single envelope I had set aside for her. This was meant for you, I said, placing it in her hands. She opened it slowly. First, the canceled listing for the River Cottage. Her breath caught. Then the pages showing Ethan's messages, the pressure he pushed onto her, the ways he framed me as an obstacle. Finally, she unfolded the letter. She read my handwriting out loud, voice trembling. If disappearing keeps you safe, I will. But I will never stop being your mother. She pressed the letter to her chest and cried again. Not out of fear this time, but release. I want to come home. Mom, she murmured. You already did. Ethan's arrest did not end everything, but it ended the part of our lives built on his lies. In the days that followed, officers called with updates. They documented the loan agreements he forged, the accounts he drained, the debts he carried across 3 counties. One investigator told me his financial restitution could reach nearly $200,000. Lila listened to every phone call with her hands clasped together, as if each detail peeled away another layer of the man she thought she knew. He lied about everything, she said one afternoon, her voice hollow. He lied because lies were all he had left, I replied. She nodded slowly. I do not want to be that kind of person again, the kind who defends someone while losing herself. We will work on that together, I said. And we did. Counseling twice a week. Long conversations that stretched late into the night. Boundaries spoken out loud instead of swallowed. It was not easy. Some days she cried more than she spoke. Some days I did. One evening, after another meeting with the detective, Lila sat beside me on the couch. Mom, did you ever think about walking away for real? I did. I admitted. For one moment. The night you asked me to disappear. She closed her eyes. I hate that I said that. I hate that I let him put those words in my mouth. You were afraid, I said. Now you are not. She leaned gently against my shoulder. I am still learning. We both are. A soft knock came at the door, Rowan, bringing the documents that confirmed Ethan's full list of charges. Lila thanked her quietly, then returned to sit with me. She took my hand, gripping it with a steadiness I had not felt from her in years. I want to start over, not pretend nothing happened, just start from truth this time. Then we will, I said, slowly, and with room for both of us. Outside, the world kept moving, cars passing, voices drifting from the street. But inside our small townhouse, something rebuilt itself one breath at a time. She once asked me to disappear, I said softly, and I did not from her life, but from the version of me who stayed silent while someone hurt my child. If you want to hear the rest of what happened, stay with me. There is more to tell, and I am ready to share it.